Folks, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for that kind reception. Thank you for everything that you are doing to save our country. This is not the first time our country's drifted off course. And when it has, it's not been the leaders in Washington who have saved us. It's been the American people rising up as you are rising up now. And God bless every one of you. You know, when people say, well, what can I do to help? When they ask me that at a Tea Party rally, the answer is pretty simple. You're doing it. You do it every day when you engage in the great debate that's going on all across the country. I urge people constantly to remember that the debates that go on in Washington are merely a reflection of a much larger debate that's going on right now among the American people, and it is upon the outcome of that debate that will determine not only the future of our country, but in times like these could well determine the very survival of our country. So just keep doing what you're doing. In every forum you can find, get involved in that debate. You are involved. Stay involved in that debate until things have been set right. And don't you dare go home until we have set things right. You know, I have thought long and hard of what to say to you today after the mixed developments in Washington this week. All of you here today sensed that your country was in danger. You devoted enormous amounts of your time and energy and resources to set things right. You placed your trust in the Republican Party to return this nation's government to its founding principles. It was your hard work, and even more importantly, your faith and confidence, that last year produced one of the biggest electoral shifts in American history. Think about that, a net Republican pickup of 63 U.S. House seats, 6 U.S. Senate seats, 680 state legislative seats, 19 state legislatures, and 6 governors. That's exactly right. And one of the most important reasons that brought you into this struggle, I know, is the damage that excessive spending and debt has already done to destroy our nation's prosperity and threaten our security, and what that means for the future if these trends are not rapidly reversed and repaired. For the last year and a half, I've told rallies like this one over and over again that you could trust that Republicans had learned from their spending spree during the Bush years, and that a new generation of leaders could be trusted this time to stand firm for constitutionally limited government and fiscal restraint. And the early days of this new session of the House were very promising. The new majority in the House of Representatives had resolved to regain the trust of the American people, and I believed could be relied upon to take a firm stand. One of the very first acts of the new Republican House majority was to repeal every vestige of Obamacare. It adopted a new rule to ban earmarks completely. It adopted a new rule called pay cut that sets a de facto limit on government spending. Every proposal from here on out to spend money has to be matched with a proposal to cut spending by a like amount somewhere else. Over the last week, though, it's now open to some question, I know, whether Republicans are slipping right back into the same lazy pattern of accommodation and profligacy that turned this nation's collective stomach in 2006 and 2008. Our principal mandate was to dramatically reduce federal spending and return the federal government to the confines of the Constitution. I believe that the initial strategy set forth by Republican leadership was sound. I was very disappointed, as I know all you were, when they scaled back on their promise to make an immediate $100 billion reduction in spending to just $61 billion. But I also drew some hope from the fact that the Speaker called for an open rule and invited every member to introduce additional spending cuts. I backed the short-term CRs to give them the time to implement that strategy and begin ramping down spending by at least $2 billion a week, and I also took them up on their offer to make additional cuts. My office, for example, as many offices did, drafted many amendments, and in our office's case, we drafted 41 separate amendments, $28 billion of additional spending reductions, but only to be told by the Republican appropriations staff that they'd be all killed unless we agreed to drop all but a handful of the most minor provisions because, in the words of the chief Republican consultant, we've already cut so much. Well, Politico reported the deliberations in an article on February 18th with these words. They said, quote, Republican budget divisions broke into the open on the House floor on Friday as conservatives sought to cut tens of billions more from a government-wide spending bill, only to be turned back by leading GOP members working in alliance with the Democrats, unquote. I must tell you all, that is precisely what I saw. The final product was brought to a vote this past Thursday. I've listened to the spin from senior Republican leaders, and frankly, I don't buy it. And I know, yes, exactly, and I know you don't either. I appreciate the fact that the spending debate has changed from how much we're going to increase spending to how much we're going to cut spending. I appreciate that the continuing resolution at least begins to reduce spending by a negligible amount, and I appreciate that it begins slowly to turn the ship of state from its present course. But the fact is, this nation is heading full speed into a sovereign debt crisis, the likes of which our country has never seen before. This isn't some moonless night on the Atlantic Ocean. We can see the peril in broad daylight, and we are barreling straight into it, and we are running out of time to change course. And the truth is that we're not yet turning the ship fast enough to avoid the financial collapse of the United States government. The nub of the problem is this. The Republican leadership sought to avoid a government shutdown at all cost. And by so doing, they taught the Democrats that all they need to do is threaten to shut down the government. The Republicans will pee in their pants and give them anything they want.
Shut it down!
But the fact is, 2011 is not 1995. In 1995, the deficit was $164 billion, and the total U.S. debt was $4.9 trillion, and the economy was strong. Today, the deficit is $1.5 trillion, 9 times as big as it was in 1995. The national debt is over $14 trillion, 3 times as big as it was in 1995. The economy is not sound, it is buckling. And the public is paying rapt attention to every vote being cast in the Congress. The fact is that if we don't bring spending under control now, even at the risk of a temporary government shutdown now, we will face in just a few years a sovereign debt crisis that means the indefinite shutdown of our government. And history is screaming this warning at us that governments that bankrupt themselves aren't around very long, because before you can provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, you have to be able to pay for them, and the ability of our government to do so is now coming into grave question. But there's also some good news that happened this week out of Washington, some news that maybe the Republican majority can redeem itself. And this is where your help is going to be absolutely crucial. The 2012 budget, the Ryan budget, that was adopted on a straight party line vote on Friday. And by the way, when people say, well, that doesn't matter, it's only a blueprint, they're dead wrong. A point of order can be raised to challenge any appropriation that exceeds the budget blueprint. It is a crucial tool in this fight. And I believe that the Ryan budget will turn the ship of state around just enough, just in time, to avoid hitting the iceberg of sovereign debt right ahead of us, although we might end up scraping a little bit of paint off the hull. Let's be clear, that's the minimum that we must do. Now, this plan takes more than 20 years to balance the budget, but it does balance it. It takes more than 45 years to pay off the debt. That's too long, but it does pay off the debt. And it's already being viciously attacked by the left, and they are sparing no distortion. This week, the president attacked the budget because he says it lowers taxes on the wealthy while raising Medicare costs for seniors. Well, the fact is, the budget ends many of the loopholes that have allowed some of the wealthy to pay less than their fair share of taxes, while it lowers the overall rate for those who paid more. And since 82% of small business income is affected by the president's tax increase, economists are warning that that could cost us 1 million jobs, and that the reductions in that rate proposed by the Ryan budget could literally produce 1 million new jobs next year. The president apparently believes that by taking more money from small business, that somehow that's going to make it possible for small businesses to create more jobs. That is insane. And that is the insanity that has been misguiding this administration's policies from the day that it took office. This budget saves Medicare and Medicaid by putting them on a sound financial foundation. It reverses the growing trend of doctors who are refusing to treat Medicare patients, and it assures future seniors a far wider choice of physicians and plans than is available to them today. This budget brings federal spending back under control, and it places our nation on a path so that when my children retire, their retirement systems will be safe and secure, and their nation will be debt-free and prosperous. Every American who cares about our nation's future has every right to be disappointed about the new majority's failure to make meaningful spending cuts in the remaining 2011 budget. And by all means, let your representatives know how you feel. Everett Dirksen said it best, when they feel the heat, they see the light. It's all right to practice tough love on your representatives. I can't tell you how many conversations I overheard on the House floor this week that went something like this. All right, I'll vote for this POS, but this is the last time I'm getting crucified by the voters back home. So let them know you're watching, let them know you're angry, let them know you'll oppose them when they fail to abide by their promises, but also let them know you'll stand behind them to the hilt when they do right. Ladies and gentlemen, this budget can save our country, but it's going to require your active involvement like never before. If you can keep the pressure up, I'm still confident that Republicans will acquit themselves well in the coming battle over the 2012 budget. I suppose you can say that old rhinos and old bulls die hard, but don't forget there's a huge freshman class that you elected, most of whom still remember who elected them and why. It'll help enormously. It'll help enormously if you keep reminding all of us. This is no time to get discouraged or frustrated or despairing. It is the perfect time to get vocal and blunt and persistent. We may have some setbacks along the way, but the Ryan budget offers us a path back to prosperity, and the solid House majority that you sent to Washington now stands behind it unanimously. That's the ground upon which we must fight. It is upon that ground that we must win. And it is upon that ground that we will save our country. God bless you all. Thank you.
One of few congressmen that is our friend. Give him a big hand.